What's up, everybody? Chris Coyier here. We are going to keep trucking on this widget that we're building. Remember, I thought it would be a really great way to learn some front-end development in lots of different aspects by trying to recreate this widget that we found on Tony Lijik's site. Remember, it's this thing. We can use these buttons to paginate through his hobbies, which I find really just cool and endearing and has beautiful animations. And let's try to recreate it and see what we learn by doing that. We are busting this thing into two parts. In the first one, we decided to use a web component here, and we're using lit element to do that. So we've made nice semantic HTML that's going to be there no matter what. Even if we get rid of the CSS and JavaScript here, we'll see all that content, which was an important thing. And if we put that back, we have this. No CSS hardly at all happening here. That's the point of this video. So let's get going on that. We're going to get rid of the CSS that we have now. It doesn't really matter. All that was there was kind of only showing the active one. And of course, we are going to do that, but we have other plans here, I'm afraid. So one of the things I like to do is a little trick here where I set the height of the body all the way up and then use display grid and place item center to put stuff in the middle of the screen. That will be useful later as we look at this kind of thing. I do also like to have a typography, and I can just tell by looking at Tony's that he's just using System UI here, which is just San Francisco is the name of the font on the Mac that I happen to be on now, but should look pretty good on pretty much any system. So it's just rendering that font instead, gives it just the tiniest little bit of polish. Now, all the styles we're going to write, and again, we used light DOM. Remember, that's what this line did here in our lit element, meaning we can kind of style whatever we want from the quote unquote outside of this thing. We're going to give us this as a CSS selector, and then we'll use nesting inside of it. So if we wanted to style, for example, these, what are they, H2s, color red? Maybe we even made them H3s, I can't remember. That should catch on those. That's just CSS nesting. We don't need to use any CSS processor to make that work. Now, what are we going to do? I think that one of the most interesting first things to do here is set up our grid. We can see this on Tony's website here. It's a left-right situation. So if we're just setting up columns, it's pretty much like 50-50. So the way to do that is display grid and then grid template columns. And we could do 50%, 50%. That could kind of work. A lot of times in grid, you'll see 1FR, 1FR, one fractional space there. And the advantage there is when I make a gap, it's not 50% plus 50% plus the gap. One rem there. We'll get some gap in there. And that's not what we're trying to do. We are trying to apply the grid to these activities. This is on the left and this is on the right. Now, that is where we wanted to apply the grid to, not that. But I did this on purpose. And I did this on purpose because you'll remember when we render these dynamic things, these activities count, and this thing, which we're ultimately going to call the activities nav, I want those to participate on the grid as well. So I need to define the grid at the highest level. So that's interesting. You'll see how that goes in a second. So we'll say there's an activity, and how do I get it to have the same grid as the parents? Well, we'll get to that in a second. One of the things that we need to do is say anything that's on this grid, all of these activities, I want to kind of just render across all the grids and columns. So grid column, I want it to start at the line 1 and end at line -1, and I'm actually going to do the same thing for the rows here, which don't quite exist yet, so you'll see some weird overlapping stuff. Let's think about this grid for a second, though, because I want to get the rows into place, and we haven't really looked at the rows yet. For one thing, there's kind of like three, because we're just going left and right. That's what the 1FR was. That's got three grid lines. There's one on the left here, one down the middle, and one on the left. But we got to think about the rows too. So here's just a little TL Draw software just to help us think a little bit. So we have the left side and we have the right side. That's kind of what's going on with our grid. But what actually is happening on the right side? It's not just one big old chunk. It's actually like the pagination is up here, and then the title and text is here, and the pagination buttons are down here. Up here was the dynamic count, right? This is kind of actually what we have as a grid, is 3 things on the right and 1 thing on the left. So when we're setting up a grid, we really have 1 grid line there, 1 grid line there, 1 grid line there, and then row-wise we have 1 more. You know, we have this 1 across the top and 1 across the bottom, and then 2 across the middle because there's 3 columns. And each of these rows, I don't really feel like we need to set any particular height to, because there's just text inside or buttons, and they should just grow to whatever they're going to grow to. So, but I do want to make sure that there's 3 of them. So we could say grid template rows is just like auto, 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 or we could say, you know, repeat 3 auto. Those are kind of the same thing there. All right, so we placed these things on top. Now it's time for activity to inherit that grid, or at least that's what I call it. This needs to be a display grid too. But I don't want to set up a new grid. I just want it to use these same templates and rows. And in order to do that, I can say grid template columns. Keyword here, subgrid. And I can say grid template rows, subgrid. Cool. Now we're getting somewhere. Now these activities are all sitting right on top of each other, which is actually kind of what we want, which is nice. Now this whole widget, I do want to kind of constrain the width of a little bit. Why don't we just say width, or we could say inline size if we're trying to be cool that way. And I'm going to use a little interesting incantation here. The minimum of 2 numbers. So what's the minimum of 20 pixels and 40 pixels? Well, it's going to be 20 pixels, and it's going to look really super weird and tiny. That's not interesting because they're not dynamic values here. What I'm trying to say is like a number that I basically want it to be. Like, why don't you be about 425 pixels wide? That'd be good. But I often use minimum to say that because if it's actually smaller than that, like if 100% is smaller than 425, that's okay too, like a really narrow screen. So that's all I'm trying to say there. Interesting. Now you can kind of see 2 images here because this one with the kid with the bike in it is just a lot taller than the other ones. Let's deal with that so it's just a little more palatable to look at for a moment. Let's say that images, now we're in an activity. I mean, I don't know how nested we want to get, but let's just start there. We could say that the actual image inside of an image has a max inline size, and that's the same again as width of 100%. That should kind of squish them back down into being just hanging out in their 1FR width. That's kind of good. And we could say like, I want to constrain the height on them. I want them all to be squares because in Tony's, they're all squares. So, and that's what we're shooting for, you know? All right, so how are we going to do that? I often find like messing directly with the image size in a grid layout is like less palatable. That's kind of why we wrapped it in a div to begin with. So let's try doing that here. Let's say that the width there is 100% and then the aspect ratio of the div is 1. Is that what we want to be doing? Or can we just say aspect ratio 1 right on it? And then we could say this thing, I think what we want to do is, how do we want to do this exactly? I think we do want to just keep that there and then actually force the width and height here to be 100%. So we'll just say inline size is 100% here and block size is 100%. That's height. So that should squish them down into shares. Yeah, absolutely. But you see how they're squished? You can see on this weight, that's not how that's supposed to look. We are force squishing the image here. So to unsquish it, we can say object fit. And I just want you to cover the space without squishing yourself. Okay, we've did it. Now there is a little bit of an interesting thing here. Maybe I'll wait on it. There's one more declaration I want to add to this image that we're going to need, but you can't really see why yet, which I think is interesting. So let's add a little flair to these images. You can see on Tony's website, they have a little, I think there's a little shadow going on. There's a little border. So let's flare those things up a little bit. Let's make sure that there's a border on this, and it's going to be like, I don't know, 3 pixels solid white maybe, and then we'll put a box shadow behind each one of them that's just like a little bit, and we can always just use like RGBA to make sure we are working with black, and that's just a little bit black. Yeah. Cool. Now that is showcasing the problem here. There's a little bit more space at the bottom than there is on the left and the right. Why is that? It's because images are inline elements and thus are subject to line height. And we just don't care for that right now. So we're just going to say display block. Now, we didn't really put a border radius on it yet, but we should. What's a nice value? Like 8 pixels or something. Yeah, cool. But then we should clip the inside image so that... overflow clip so that the image kind of goes along with the border radius. There we go. I think that's pretty nice look to all those images. They're all sitting on top of each other at the moment. You can clearly see that all the text is sitting on top of each other, but that is just where we're at the moment. So what should we do next then? I feel like rotating the images might be fun. You can see each one of these is obviously rotated a little bit differently than the rest. Now, how would we rotate that? Well, we could just rotate it here. So rotate. You used to have to transform. You don't need to do that anymore. Let's say they were all 4 degrees rotated. Now they're all going to turn a little bit. Now that's cool, but we want to change each one of them differently. So one of the ways we could do that is be like, well, I don't know. Let's use nth child to select the second one. We'll go and, so as we retain the selector via nesting. And nth child, like the second one or something, we'll rotate that one 8 degrees instead of 4. Not sure. 20 degrees. We're rotating just one of them, are we not? Let's inspect to see what's going on there. Maybe I wrote the selector a little wrong. So the activity, the second, oh, I see. It's there is no second child of the image. There's a second child of the activity. So we kind of need to go like, put that up here. You know, there's activity, 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 but there's only one image per activity. So we're actually selecting the second activity and then rotating the image there. So this would be like .img or something to clean up that selector. Now there's a number of ways we could write this. So, okay, but one of the things that I don't mind that. We could just do a bunch of nth child selectors here and do that. And in fact, we probably will. It's the repeating the property that isn't my favorite, you know? So one of the ways you could do that instead is going rotate and then use a variable to do it instead. So we could do something like image rotate. And if there is no value, then just 0 degrees, although I think that would probably happen anyway because it would be an invalid value. And then here we can just set image rotate instead. Image rotate is like 4 degrees or whatever it is. So that's still going to rotate that one down there. It's just that in case this declaration needs to change, we're not changing it a whole bunch of times. I don't mind that so much. So let's say we just do it a bunch of times with different positive and negative values. So I have some here. I'll just hit save. Cool. Now we're rotating them all a little bit differently. Isn't that nice? I think maybe we'll leave that alone just for a little bit while we kind of place some things more into place. I notice a few things missing. I can actually see it peeking out just the littlest, tiniest bit. And the upper left of this is that there's this, that's the pagination button. It's just getting tucked way down there below. So what are those pagination buttons? Let's put those things where they need to go. We set up the grid. Now let's use it, you know? Well, there's the activities count. So I'll put that in here. I'm going to put it within the nesting of the widget. I kind of like the light scoping we have going in there. For one thing, we can't even see it. Let's see if we can pump it up. Yeah, there it is. So now it's saying 1 out of 4. But where we want to put it is in the grid column. Now, where do we want to put it? We want to put it in the second column, right? And then end it at the third grid line. That's what that's doing. It's saying start at the second grid line, the first one being on the left, the second one being down the middle, the third one being on the right. We could also write -1 if we wanted to like stretch grid lines all the way to the end. In this case, I don't mind being specific a bit. And then we'll say, what row do we want it to be in? Well, it's really in that first one. That's where it automatically falls, but it doesn't hurt to be a little explicit. And then there's the activities nav. Now, where does it go? We also can't see it, so let's kick up the z-index on that so we can see it on top of, see what we got going on. Grid column is the same deal. We want it in the start at 2 and end at 3 situation. That's going to kick it over here, but we want to put it down in the last one. We're just being really explicit with our rows here. We're going to end that at, I guess it starts in the third and ends at the fourth. Does that make sense? Just a smidge, unless I have that wrong. 2, 3. Let's. This is never be afraid of looking in the old web inspector to see what we have going on. Where's our grid? Nice. But it thinks we have 4 grid lines. Oh, because the text itself isn't being put into that middle row. That's why it kind of looks a little funny to me. We've worked with images, but we haven't worked with our TEXTs, which are this whole chunk. You know, this is in the first, this is in the second column. Let's just be explicit about where that should go. We want it to be in the second column and then start at the second grid row and end at the third grid row. Will that change anything? It does a bit. Let's look at the grid again. I think it's actually doing closer to what we want. So now we have the dynamic count in the first row, the text in the second row, and the pagination in the third row, which is what we want. But really, these images should stretch all 3 rows. And we can do that by, again, just being explicit about what we want on this grid. We're going to say it actually starts in the first column, and then it starts in the first row and actually just spans all the columns. -1 just means all the columns. So there, that's what we want to see. There's a little bit too much space, I think. And I think the space is probably just coming from, for one thing, the gap. One thing, we can control the gap if we just did like a less of a gap on the up and downs and more of a gap on the left and rights. Have I done that correctly? Let's say if we make this 2, what's getting bigger? Yeah, the left, right. So less of a gap up and down. That's kind of good. And then it's inside the text. What did we decide? We have H3s in there. What should we do with those H3s? Well, we'll just make sure there's just bottom margin on there. And now we're kind of getting closer to what we want. So I guess we're doing pretty good there. Why don't we concern ourselves with the active classes text? We haven't really dealt with active classes much, but as a reminder, when we move previous and move text, one of the things that we're doing is just making sure that the right activity has class of active on it. So if we look in DevTools, the first activity will have active on it, and then we hit next. Now the second activity will have active on it. We hit third, 3. Only one of them at a time has it. We're not really doing anything at all with that yet, though. We have that class to use. Why don't we use it? And let's start with the text, because why not? One of the things we could do is say opacity 0 on all that text. It's just going to go away. It's gone. That makes sense, doesn't it? But we could say that when you're within a parent that has class active, then we want the opacity to come back. Couldn't we do that? Wouldn't that make sense? Boop, 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 boop. Gosh, we actually came a long way with just those couple of lines of CSS. But what I wanted to do is like a little more juiciness, you know, transition, 0.2 seconds, for example. Now what happens is a little fade in between them, right? One's fading out, the other one's fading in because it has this transition on it. Makes sense. Another thing we could do, and why don't we look at Tony's, because this is where this is all coming from, is that his text goes down and then back up. Down and then back up. So we could do that, could we not? We could just say translate. And 0 horizontally, but 25 pixels down. It's weird that it's the opposite of gap, right? In gap, that's vertical, but in that, this is vertical. Do I have that right? That's weirding me out. But then we'll just go back to 0. So the text is pushed down while it's hidden, and then when it becomes active, it comes back up. So whoop, 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 whoop. I don't know if that's exactly like Tony's. This looks like his kind of goes down, and it's almost like there's a little pause in the middle. Now we could explore that. That may require us moving to animations instead of transitions, or trying to monkey with a different transition delay. As a matter of fact, it makes me want to at least try it. Transition delay only on the active state. I wonder what that would do. Or maybe we make it the same amount. Oh, that totally does work, actually. That was just a random thought of mine, and it works particularly good. I'm just going to leave it because I like that. That means there's a delay when it becomes active and no delay otherwise, so it's not annoying. That's cool. I also noticed that this is like a little bit lighter gray, this and this, as far as text is concerned, and I do kind of like that. So let's steal it, shall we? So that the text is like, I don't know, color. It's I don't know. Should we use how do you set this? I mean, we could just say like it's 70% of black essentially, but then it's going to make the header that way too, and I kind of want the header to just be full black. Whenever when I write black like that, it kind of bugs me out because I'm going to put this on the count too, just because we talked about it being there. It's not going to work in light mode, dark mode, is it? So if we go like dark mode, it's just going to be black then, and I think that's annoying. So it makes me feel like, oh, we have to deal with this now. The first thing I'm going to do just to deal with this is just to go color, scheme, light, dark. It's just telling the page we support both modes, and it's going to make this function that we're about to use work better. So we're going to say, instead of saying color black, we're going to say light, dark as a function. So it's in light mode, I do want it to be black, but in dark mode, I want it to be white. Nice. See how we got that for free, and these buttons kind of go dark automatically? Nice. I'm noticing I can't select the text. We're going to have to fix that. But then we go back to light mode, and that goes to black there. So we're making use of that. It just feels nice anytime you're setting colors or backgrounds or borders or stuff. It feels good to use a function like this if you know you're supporting both modes. That is a nice way to do it, I'd say. Do we need to change this? It kind of seemed like it worked in both modes, so let's leave that alone for now. I am noticing that I can't select the text. It looks like because of a z-index situation. I think the active tab or the active text we need to set z-index on so that it's on top for sure. So now I can select that text. Okay. We are doing good there. Now, clearly one of the big things from the video is, and I imagine there might be people fast forwarding just to this point, is that the images are kind of coming out and then they come back in when they activate. I think that is awfully cool, and we just kind of need to tackle that, I think. So let us work on that. We have an active class now for text, so we need an active class for images as well. So what happens to one of these .img things when it's active? What could happen in the active? Now, I don't think just a transition is going to do it, because we have to come out and back in, and I don't think that's really expressible so much in with just a transition, which just goes from one state to the next. So we are going to need to call an animation. We're going to have to call an animation. It doesn't exist yet, but we'll call it like move out in or something. And let's make it happen over, I don't know, 2/3 of a second. And I don't know, ease in out or something. We can look at more interesting things later. This meaning easing, which you can do cubic Bezier easing, which gives you lots of power. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, an interesting thing about this, actually, let's come back to that. This doesn't exist yet. Move out and in. Keyframes got to be declared at the top if we're not using any framework, which are not. So we'll say keyframes, move out in. Now, what I want to happen is halfway through this animation, I want the card to be pulled all the way to the left. So like halfway through, literally translate negative 100% 0. That's the horizontal value. Ooh, look at that. You can kind of see it sneaking out there. And then at 100%, we don't even have to describe it. I just want it to come back to where it was, which it's already kind of doing. But I do want to mess with that z-index value. So when it comes out and comes in, it goes back on top. Now that's what I was hesitant to do, but now we need to do it. You see, it came back on top, but then it just went back below. And that's because the image did not have an animation fill mode of forwards. Forward saying, whatever the state is at the end of the animation, I want you to stay there. Stay in that final state. Stay in this 100% state, keeping that z-index on top, which is great. Now we could do whatever we wanted to. We could scale it bigger if we wanted to as it comes out and refreshes. It gets bigger temporarily. Let's make it really obnoxiously big that we would never keep, but just so you can see it as it comes out, it gets really big and then comes back down. I do kind of like the effect. I don't know if Tony's doing it exactly, but it's kind of neat. So that's the effect there. So now as we paginate and different ones become active, the card's coming out and coming back up on top. I think we achieved that decently nicely there. It should work in reverse too. Okay, fantastic. That is the out-in animation. Not too bad there. But there's also this other thing that Tony's doing that it jiggles the images as it happens, right? So as I paginate forward, all the images kind of straighten out and then they re-jiggle out. So that is something that we'll need to handle as well. Now, how are we going to handle it? I think the way that we're going to need to handle it is that it's not just applying to the active or the previously active one. It's happening to all the images. So how do we select all of the activities, all of the images when there's pagination is happening? And I don't think we really have a way to do it right now. So we're going to have to get a little fancy with this. My idea for this is to, when this is happening, when we're removing an active class and adding an active class, that's the moment that I want all those images to straighten out. So I need a class. I need to, for example, say this, which is referencing the whole widget up here. I'm going to say class list.add and just say, hey, your children are animating right now. So that gets added whenever we're changing it. But we do need to remove that class. When should we remove it? I think we should remove it when this thing that we have our reference to already, we'll say add event listener. And the event that we're listening to isn't a click or anything. It's going to be called the animation end event. When that gets triggered on that particular activity, we're going to run a function, and inside that function, we're going to remove that class. So this dot class list dot remove this time children animating. That's when we're going to do it. Now make sure I spell it right and all that. And I also I don't want these event listeners just stacking and stacking and stacking. So one of the things we can do here is just say once is true. Like once you've done this, the event listener can die and we'll add it again as needed. So let's just make sure that it's happening as we expect it to be happening. So this activities widget, when I go next, should temporarily get this class of children animating. And we can see that happening in the DOM, so we are good to go there. Now we can use that children animating class. Let's do something really simple with it. Remember, we're up here, so if we went like and.children animating, it could have like background red or something, just so we can see that it works there as well. Yeah, so it's going red while the animation is happening, and then the red goes away. That's nice. That's not what we intend to do, but we're going to need that for a moment. So then where do we set image rotate down to 0 degrees? Well, we're going to do it in a keyframes animation again. So what I want to do is, while this thing is animating, right? Well, we're going to do that again. While children animating. So we're selecting the activities widget with this class that we added to it. These .imgs here are going to be subject to a new animation that we're going to do to it. So animation, we'll call it, we'll do it over that same time period, I guess, and we'll call it straighten images. Great. We won't deal with easing just for the moment. When we call straighten images in its keyframe animation, it's going to set the image rotate to 0. And that's nice because animations kind of like automatically override. We're not going to have to worry about specificity or anything. So let me just put this at the bottom. Keyframe straighten images. And again, halfway through the animation, we want the degrees to be 0. But then all the way, just go back to whatever rotation that you already had. Yeah. Now we're not really seeing it animate here. It's just jumping from one to the other. And that's again, because we have not declared what this custom property is. This just looks like a string. So this could be hamburger and see, that's not an error or any kind of problem for CSS. It just so happens that 4 degrees works, but pretty much anything is a valid value for a custom property unless you type it, unless you say what you want it to be. And we're going to do that right at the top of the page. We're going to say at property, a new thing we're looking at here. What we call it, img rotate, right? We're going to say what type it is. The syntax of it is an angle. We're using degrees there. So now we're saying exactly what it is. Now that's going to allow CSS to know what it is and thus animate it. We'll say inherits is true. That's important for us here because we're passing it along through the cascade a bunch, and that the initial value is 0 degrees. Wouldn't it be cool if we could set that to random or something? So now as we paginate, look at them animate to straight and then animate back out. Isn't that nice? That just happened because of this app property here in CSS. Interestingly, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, wait, did we do it? Are we done? We have a grid set up. We have pagination set up. We have done this in a progressive enhancement friendly way. We have light DOM styling here that we could pick up and put down here in the render method if we want to, but we're just playing around and learning here. Gosh, and it circles back around. Like sometimes when you put the last puzzle piece in place and then you step back and look at it, you're like, wow, I think we did it. It's not terribly far away from what Tony has here. We have the count working. He's got probably little SVGs down here that we could copy, but I don't think that's as interesting for this video. Not entirely necessary. I think we kind of nailed it. Look, in 73 lines of JavaScript and 150 lines of CSS and then some semantic, accessible, very normal HTML, we have recreated this thing and I'm feeling pretty good about it. I better hit fork here so that we can say video step 2 and have a nice clean save of that. But it's been a pleasure coding for all y'all. Let me know if you have any questions and I appreciate you watching. Take care.